So I'm with the wonderful Kirsten Connell, who is currently the MD at CyLon. Prior to that, she worked for Camp, and she's also involved with the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women, helping mentor women in business. I've been a big fan of CyLon for quite some time, and having spent some time with Kirsten this evening, I'm a really big fan of hers now too. For people who don't know, can you tell us a little bit about what CyLon and HutZero do?
Yeah, absolutely. So at CyLon, we find, grow, and invest in the world's most exciting cybersecurity companies. We run a 3-month acceleration program. So we provide office space, mentoring, we introduce our companies to potential customers, to investors, and we provide a sort of 101 knowledge, I suppose, through workshops as to how to best build your company. So that could be through, how do you hire, how do you scale, how do you think about your distribution channel, how do you go about pricing? It really is designed for founders who have set up, this is probably most likely going to be their first company, and we try and just give them the platform and the network that they need to make their company a success.
Fantastic. And you're also involved with HutZero as well, which complements the program.
Yeah, absolutely. So HutZero is a wonderful initiative funded by DCMS, so government funded. So it's completely free, and it's for individuals who have an idea around cybersecurity but haven't turned that idea into a company yet. So HutZero is sort of like the 13-week CyLon acceleration program condensed down into 1 week. So it's really intense, workshops, mentoring. We bring sort of 20 of the UK's best minds together to our office in Hammersmith. They go through this intense 1-week boot camp, and we've run 3 to date. And the individuals, so we've supported sort of 70 individuals now through HutZero. An impressive number of them have now actually gone on to set up their own cybersecurity company, and some of them have then even hopped into CyLon's full program and have received funding and are selling. So it's really wonderful to see a government initiative really helping to boost the number of cybersecurity companies created here in the UK.
That's amazing. It's so good to have success stories like that.
Yeah, and such wonderful people who join the program, very diverse, different ages, different backgrounds. So yeah, it's a really fun 1 week and a great network to be part of.
So based on your experiences there, what do you think is more important, the idea or the person behind it?
Great question. So for me, it would always have to be the person or the team. And the reason I say that is because I think an idea is important, and the idea, absolutely, your idea needs to be addressing a problem in the market. And I think that's one of the great things about cybersecurity companies is more often than not, they're created because the founder identified a problem. So, they're rather than some of the nice to have startups that are created, which absolutely they're wonderful. I think when it comes to cybersecurity, they're addressing a real need in the market, and that's so important. But the reason I go for the person or the team over the product is if you invest in a fantastic team, they will be able to navigate this complex landscape of setting up a company, trying to hire, right? So to bring in great talent, and I suppose you would know that better than anyone, you need to be able to sell your idea to somebody else and get some other wonderful person who has a complementary skill set to you to join the company. And then you just need that determination. And I mentioned earlier in my presentation, the person needs to be a hustler. They're going to get knocked down. They're going to get so many no's. And therefore, I think it's the team and the tenacity that person has, and their drive and their passion, that will ultimately be the difference between a company succeeding and a company failing. So yeah, I would always pick the individual or the team.
Now, you mentioned talent a lot there, and we hear a lot about a talent shortage within the market. Do you think there is one, or do you think there are lots of people there that just need that opportunity?
Yeah, so I would say, and just basing this on the various statistics that I've read as well, is that there is already a skills shortage within cybersecurity, and I think that skills shortage is only drastically going to increase. And so we've definitely been working with a number of companies who are addressing that very issue. And then the other thing I think is important to flag is ensuring that the world of cybersecurity isn't just this sort of unknown sector aimed at guys who can code. to create a successful business, they need a multidisciplinary skill set. So they need people who can think about UX, who are great at selling, who are great at managing a team and growing an organization, doing HR, doing social media, doing comms. If nothing else, I say comms is such an important area for cybersecurity. There can be an awful lot of buzzwords. Cybersecurity solutions can sound very similar to one another, especially if you're not very technical, and often the person signing off on the budget doesn't necessarily have a technical background. So being able to clearly describe what your product does and for who, it takes a very skilled individual, and that individual most likely won't have a technical skill set. And in fact, perhaps they can more clearly articulate what the product does. And therefore, I think I'm just trying to get my point across that I'd really like to see cybersecurity be more open, and for people who don't have a technical skill set still be open-minded to pursuing a career within cybersecurity, because it's not just the coders that this industry needs, it's everyone.
I think that's such a good point, and there's a real drive from companies to get more diversity into the industry.
Yeah.
Is that something you're seeing come through?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm almost very proud of the companies we've worked with. So we've invested and supported 53 companies to date, and from sort of over 25 different nationalities. And so many of the founders, even if they are male, they have set a really strong internal precedent that they want to hire women into the company, diversity across the board really, at different functionalities as well. So it's not just the junior hires. They're really looking at bringing on co-founders who are male and female, so a more balanced team. And almost to the point now where I've spoken to so many of our companies who are each, they each have this initiative. They keep asking me the same questions. Which network shall I go to? Where can I find more women to join the company? And so sort of one of my very long ambitions or to-do list is to connect the great male and female founders that we work with who have this real drive, and to create, I don't know, be it a white label or a piece of advice, something that's scalable, that other founders, whether they're in the cybersecurity industry or not, but who have the same ambition and drive to hire more women into the sector, to sort of just share their tips. Because once I think a company is conscious of it, more often than not, it gives them a competitive edge, because they're able to hire talent that they otherwise, which their competitors are probably just missing out on. So it definitely gives startups a competitive edge. And if our 53 companies can create something together, which they can share with the wider startup sector, then that would be brilliant to across the board encourage people who wouldn't have considered a career in tech to join a startup, because it's wonderful.
Brilliant. What would your top tips be for somebody that's thinking about starting up a cybersecurity business, or is maybe at that point where they've got it but they don't quite know how to get it to market?
Okay, what would my top tips be? So I have a few. The first and foremost, I think, try and talk to as many people as possible. I think that's where serendipity kicks in. You never know who might be relevant for your business. So I think always be spreading the word. And that way, I think you might find, and I've heard this from the founders that we've worked with, the most unexpected places. They found a co-founder, or they found an angel investor. We even had an example where on our last cohort, one of the companies was pitching as a practice session, and another member of one of the other startups, he was so impressed by it, and he took him aside and he was like, no, I'd love to invest in you personally. And so you just never know when these opportunities might present themselves. So I suppose my first tip is talk to everyone. And following on from that is absolutely try and talk to the customers as soon as possible. I can't stress that enough. I think you might think you have a wonderful idea, and if you ask certain questions, you might sort of hear the answers that you're hoping to hear, but it's not until you actually try and sell your product that you'll get true feedback. And for any startup, time and money is so valuable. You don't want to find yourself in a position where you spent the last 6 months developing a product that actually isn't quite what the market needs. Mm-hmm. And if you try and sell your product from day one, even if it's not ready, which is daunting, you're going to get some really honest feedback, and hopefully that's when opportunities will present themselves.
Brilliant. Well, I could sit here and talk to you all evening. I would
Yes,
have a
likewise.
million other questions, but I think that's all we've got time for tonight.
Okay.
But thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.